Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the impacts of climate change. You must have heard about these terms when we talk about either climate change or global warming. Now everybody used to think that these are the issues of the Western world. Interestingly, the more carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide or other emissions you will emit, it is going to impact the overall system, the global system, as far as climate weather is concerned. Now, interestingly, if you just look at the pattern last 20 years or so, it has been recognized, it has been registered that Pakistan is going to be among those top 6 countries which is going to get most affected, whether it is about Holland or it is about New York City or Bangladesh for that matter, or perhaps certain other vulnerable regions. But Pakistan is one of them. Now, second important factor is that though the contribution as far as the emissions is concerned could be very little as far as Pakistan is concerned. America is number 1, China definitely is almost there. But Pakistan is going to suffer. Pakistan is already suffering. The global temperature has also been risen by 2 degrees Fahrenheit during the last couple of decades, or perhaps a little more. But the interesting factor is that due to this, the sea level is rising, number 1. Secondly, you talk about the melting of the glaciers that is also taking place, and these flash floods which we have witnessed recently, perhaps other than rain, is another very important factor. The monsoon factor is also playing a very, very important role in this region. We all know that, Bay of Bengal, and then these clouds, they go towards the north, over the Himalayas, and then the rainfalls. But another phenomena, that a place like Balochistan in Pakistan is getting a lot affected, just because of the fact that we hardly used to experience any rain there, maybe a few millimeters of rain, but now you're talking about 50 or 60, perhaps in 2 days' time. So flash flooding and then the overflowing of the dams. Though as far as the water containment is concerned, we haven't done much. We should have done much earlier. Major dams should have been there, not only for the purpose of storing the water, but also for cheap electricity. But we all know, unfortunately, that hasn't been done, though there were a lot of proposals. Now, look at KP, what's happening out there. Literally, villages have been washed away by these flash floods. You talk about what is happening in Karachi, it's unbelievable. Literally 3 feet of water in most of these areas, and there are certain areas like Defence for that matter, the basements are full of water, and then you talk about the ground floor, almost knee-high water is there. It is going to impact the lifestyle and everything in most of these areas. A lot of issues, I think, which we should blame the governments for, hasn't been taken care of. Whether you talk about the cleanest factor, use of these plastic bags, these shoppers, which we call, again another problem. Then encroachment over these nalas. I mean, when you talk about those streams in Punjab also, those used to be streams, but now they're like rivers. In certain areas, extreme drought. In certain areas, extreme flooding. So this is what we are witnessing these days. And this is not only related to Pakistan. Floods in China, global warming's impact in Europe. Just imagine 40 degrees in London or in the surrounding areas. That is not a joke. They had never experienced 40 degrees centigrade, which is pretty okay for us. But just imagine this is what we have seen. Early monsoons, again, something is concerning especially Pakistan. Now, before I introduce you to our panelists and we talk further about it, that what exactly is happening, how long will it continue, what needs to be done, a quick reminder that during the time of Corona, I was going through an article and I was surprised to learn that 7% less emissions went in the air. And that was because most of these factories were shut down. So I think this carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and another important factor in so many areas, whether you talk about Antarctic or certain northern areas of Russia, where methane is also leaking from lakes and certain areas. And we do not exactly know, when we talk about the emissions, we in fact calculate on the given data, but there are so many areas where methane, imagine methane, which you can burn straight away, is also being released, and you can well imagine that impact also. Now we'll show you a report that has been produced by a production team. Let's watch that, and then after that we'll continue our program.
Pakistan has long ranked among the most climate vulnerable countries in the world according to the Global Climate Risk Index, and while facing the brunt of the climate change. Pakistan this year has experienced an unprecedented heat wave and a series of extreme climate events ranging from flash floods to forest fires. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif recently in his tweet said that the government is aligning its development goals with climate change requirements. He added that the climate change is an undeniable reality of our times and has serious consequences for developing countries like Pakistan, and the ongoing floods and torrential rains in the country need to be seen from the same angle. To highlight this crucial global challenge, which is disproportionately affecting the poor and developing states, Pakistan has called on the developed countries to fulfill their $100 billion commitment to help developing countries in reducing emissions and adapting to global warming. This voice was raised by Ambassador Amir Khan, Deputy Permanent Representative of Pakistan to the United Nations, during a virtual briefing on the Petersburg Climate Dialogue 2022, a German initiative for discussing concrete steps towards overcoming the climate crisis. He added that developing countries, while not responsible for the majority of the emissions today, too often bear the brunt of the climate change impacts. In this regard, the Pakistani envoy welcomed the commitments reached at the Glasgow summit, including on at least doubling climate financing for adaptation, saying further action is needed to ensure a greater balance between support for mitigation and adaptation in climate finance.
Now to talk about it, we have with us in our studio on my right is Dr. Shahid. He's a water expert. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. And we also have with us Dr. Ejaz Ahmad. He's an environmentalist. Pleasure to have you on the program as well.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, you have seen the report. You also heard in the introduction that now Pakistan is one of those vulnerable countries which will suffer the most. Now the problem is that Pakistan has got limited resources. Today even the Prime Minister held a very important meeting in which they discussed in detail about the environmental issues and the flooding. But sir, unfortunately what we have witnessed that we are very reactive rather than being proactive, that we should have thought that, you know, whenever I switch on my telephone, I get to see that, okay, next week is going to be somewhat like this. So you can plan accordingly. But now, sir, what we have witnessed over a period of time, I'm going to put the first question to you, Dr. Ejaz, that extreme monsoon. Yeah. Monsoon was always there, but this is a new phenomena. So melting of the glaciers and at a rate which is unbelievable. So again, flash flooding in so many hilly areas. Then places like Balochistan, where there used to be very minimal amount of rain, but now, sir, it's unbelievable. I mean, you can't even believe that this is Balochistan, where you'll be. I mean, I used to remember that river Kabul had brown water, murky water, whereas river, the other one had clean water, glacier versus, and they used to merge right under the Khattak bridge. Yeah. And then, now that murky water concept was very scary. And so now that's all over. Those streams, they converted into rivers, roads converted into streams, and people living in certain posh areas, I mean, they are suffering now. Look at Karachi, look at Punjab, look at Balochistan, look at Sindh, I mean, you name it, Kashmir, yeah. Northern areas, it's everywhere.
Islamabad.
Is it because of this global warming and climate change, sir, or perhaps this is what you had already forecasted way back that this is going to happen?
Yeah, I think that overall, if we see globally, the environment is changing, and you know, as you mentioned earlier in the intro, 40 degree in London, it's hard to imagine. And then also these floods are quite common phenomena these days in different parts of the world. And this basically the global change, global warming, climate change, it's a very slow process. But over a period of time, the ozone depletion actually has been happening. And then the impact actually we are seeing now is all those you know, like events that are going on, whether it's a glacier melt. Glacier used to actually start melting end of June, or even, you know, like maybe early July because of the heat. hot weather in the northern part of Pakistan. But what happened this year, that we had this huge glacier melt, which caused disaster in the northern areas in Gilgit-Baltistan in May, early May, most probably, I think, or end of April, where like there was a devastated flood, and the bridges and the villages, they collapsed, and there was a huge loss of lives as well. So these phenomena are now a reality. People were not actually, even the decision makers, US for example, was not thinking that climate change is a phenomena which is going to damage the entire universe, in a sense that it is now creating problems everywhere. So the realization of the problem was not there, which actually now we see the impacts, as you mentioned. Pakistan is contributing less than 1% in the emission, in the global emission, but it is for the last 25-30 years, it is the most vulnerable country among top 10. Sometime it is top 3, sometime top 5, but it remained in top 10 countries of the world which are actually suffering from all these disasters.
Correct.
So this phenomena, this is I think the realization of this problem was not there at any level, at the decision making level. But then I think we started thinking about it in Pakistan, globally as well. In 2012, there was a climate change policy which was formulated, agreed upon, and then accepted, but nothing happened. The policy is there. There is a framework for different actions which was also developed, and nothing is happening actually. So there is no action which actually relates to the disaster that we are actually facing, which is very unfortunate.
And so this is going to be a constant phenomenon in the future also?
Of course, it is going to be the because unless and until we repair those damages which has been caused, these phenomena will remain like that. These events, maybe it will be a bit more, or it can be little less, but ultimately it is going to happen unless and until. And there are discussions, globally discussion going on to bring the temperature back by 2030. Nothing is actually happening. No one is willing to actually invest. And then things are still at the same.
I still remember Donald Trump never took it seriously.
No, exactly.
If you remember, being the American president.
Yeah.
Now, sir, another important factor, since this is going to be a constant and continuous phenomena, sir, throughout the world, and you can't bring the temperature down within a year or two, because it took decades, it will take decades to come back down. But, sir, certain measures should be adopted on immediate basis. Number one, since we are focusing on Pakistan, so that is what matters the most. Whether you talk about the floodings of early 90s, that in fact resulted in so many deaths, and plus when you see those poor cows and goats, just taken away by the flash flood, I mean, you really feel bad and sad about it, right, sir? But this is what has been happening, this is what is happening as we speak, this is going to continue. Now, so the question is that what sort of measures do you believe we need to take? Obviously, we talk about building dams so that we can contain water. We should also look after the canals so that they should be cleaned, or not, if not on yearly basis, at least once in 2 years or something of that. Plus, when we talk about cutting of trees, because unfortunately that has also resulted in a lot of erosion, and then these landslides are also, because of them. People, as far as the Western world is concerned, so they do understand the details and they are really concerned about the future of their children. But in Pakistan, sir, nobody takes it seriously. Don't you think that some proper awareness campaign should be there so that people should understand what's going on, sir?
I think, as you mentioned, it took decades of the mismanaged development that resulted into this disaster. when there was a debate that it's going to happen, many, particularly I would talk about the developed world like the US, not only the Trump, the nation as a whole didn't take it seriously and didn't put enough pressure, and then America was the almost last to be serious about climate change. And you said that it might take decades to address it. It might take even longer because the global community is still not serious about climate change. When I say they are not serious, that doesn't mean they do not talk about it. They talk about it a lot. They are pushing the whole global community. We need to do this, and we need to develop our climate change policies and plans and this and that. But they are not ready to do their bit from their sort of changing the development paradigms. If we are serious about climate change, the West have to drastically change their food production systems.
Food production.
And they are not willing to do that because it will be very painful. But they were asking and pushing the South to go for mitigation and adaptation. So they were not maybe ready to accept that this heat will reach them also so soon. And now when you see the heat waves in the Europe and in the West, you'll see serious steps they will be taking to address these issues. Our problem is that, as Dr. mentioned, that we have the climate change policy. We are having NDMA. We are having a flood protection commission, and then, as I said, they will come as a reaction after the event to do that. They have some policies in place. And we, as you also mentioned, that we do not have resources. It's not the matter of resources. It's basically how serious we are about these damages, and how serious we are to address these issues. Let me take one example first, that is easy to understand. Nala Leh, coming from Islamabad, going through Rawalpindi, and then
falling into
Swan.
So,
I'm watching it since 1985 here in Islamabad. Every time when it is a bit more rain in Islamabad, the Pindi people are suffering.
It gets choked because the problem is, then we
and
end up hearing
talk about we need to
emergency measures should be taken.
Yes, and we'll forget again. It's just a matter of cleaning these tributaries, taking water to Leh, and also raising it, managing area around it. Even if we'll have to move people from those areas who have just encroached there. And in the cities, we are facing almost every small and big, Karachi and Lahore and others. It's poor town planning.
Absolutely.
We will improve this street and then choke the other one because this is raised a couple of sometimes even feet, and then there is no sort of planning for the whole area where the rainwater would go. In Lahore, they have put some resources to manage this water as underground storage. Lahore was a bit better in these rains in the last couple of years, and that the water they're storing underground is also helping recharge the underground water. That's not just
the water table, which has gone down so much.
Yes, and underground. I even argued in our last program also. Storage underground is cheaper than the dams, and then that water will remain available for you for your use. We have another almost available storage, that is the river beds of those rivers that India have stopped. We need just to manage that as a and divert water to those areas and store over there. That will improve the water quality of those areas, Bhavannagar and that area. And
so it is going to be a win-win situation in every case.
Every case. Yes. What I always argue is that we can do almost nothing to reduce the temperatures, to reduce the melting of the glacier. But what we can do is, we need to plan around that. In 2011, I was in Bangkok in a disaster risk reduction workshop or global sort of, they were sharing their experiences. I was so sort of impressed with the Netherlands strategy. The only country living below
the sea.
Below the sea level, they assured their nation that next 100 years you will not see any flood in the country.
And it is true actually. Sir, the Dutch people, they in fact, most of these canal system in Europe, whether you talk about Denmark or other countries, that were built by the Dutch people. They had expertise in that. And look what they did to their own country. I mean, they properly erected a wall. The same formula was also being applied by the Italians. If you remember, Venice was underwater. So this much. People were practically walking in the water.
So they were going into minute details. If a sort of rainwater is diverted in this area, and see, it might,
they have been able to reclaim their own land.
Yes. It might overflow. They will put another diversion there. So we need to see, when we have more rains, we need to divert. We should be able to divert, and then we don't have to do everything in 1 year. At least
it's a gradual process.
Let's maybe 100-year plan. Let's plan and do something. Start doing something. If we cannot say that we don't have resources, and we will not even start minor things doing here and there. If we have a plan, we can.
Basically, you're talking about infrastructure development in this
the next 5
area.
years, we will do this. Okay, underground water storage, diversion of floods to the areas where we really need water, and the storage, whether underground or the dams, is important. When we have more rain, we need to store. When there is drought, we need to be able to get this water to those areas. So we'll have to rethink about our whole irrigation infrastructure, and it needs to be sort of planned again according to
the weather patterns. That's so interesting.
So, like shifting rains, whether it goes to Balochistan or rice area was planned because more rains in this area. Now it has gone.
Is it true that the monsoon is shifting towards the west?
It is actually the worst part of climate change is we have very little predictability of what will happen. If there are more rains this year in this area, doesn't mean next year it will be the same pattern.
Look at the example of Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
I mean, the kind of storms that you have seen there, the sea storms basically. I mean, look at what they can do, even if they are category 3 or 4. Forget about Katrina kind of disaster. Yeah. That was category 5. Nobody ever thought water surging, and then just imagine the entire city is underwater in certain places 20-25 feet. So, I think this is something which we can't take lightly. Now, coming to you, sir.
I just want to add something.
Please go ahead.
Actually, we always, like think about bigger things, like big dam, huge infrastructure,
reservoirs,
etc. Where there are small solutions as well, which we can, maybe short term, medium term, long term. Like rainwater harvesting is very small thing.
Have to be done.
You have to actually, you don't need kind of investment that even at a small scale you can do it. At household level you can do it.
And as far as habits are concerned, sir, in the time of Musharraf, Jahangir Tareen, I remember, was the Minister for Industries, if I'm not wrong. So I was just having a chat with him, and he told me that the city of Lahore, so there was this survey that people living in Lahore, they waste the maximum amount of water. I mean, for example, if you're shaving, your tap is open.
Yeah.
I mean, you can practically take a bath with a bucket of water, which you end up using just to shave.
Yeah.
So I think it's about the awareness campaign also, that
Right.
even at the school level, if the kids are, told that, see, this is what is going to happen, this is how you need, change your habits.
Right.
Number one. And so you have talked about this very important phenomena of rainwater storage. Collecting the water which is falling on your house, on your roof, and then you end up collecting it. And a few people have also put it back in their wells, so that
Recharge wells. Yeah.
So that was a brilliant idea.
And even in Islamabad, you're talking about Lahore, but even in Islamabad, water table has gone down from 100 feet to
400 feet.
400 to
Yes.
500 feet.
When
In
you do the
Lahore-
boring, I mean, you
Yeah.
get surprises.
Exactly. In Lahore, it has gone up to 600, and Quetta is like 1,000 or 800, something like that. So it's basically, and then the recharge well will help in, recharging the aquifer, recharging the water that.
Instead, this
actually
water just goes into the sea.
Exactly.
If it is like consumed in one way or the other.
Right.
So that is something brilliant.
I think in Lahore, if you see this Dungi grounds, there are many Dungi grounds, and I was reading somewhere that the whole purpose of these Dungi grounds were basically to recharge that area.
So they were man-made.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, keeping some areas from where the rainwater can at least go and recharge.
And then the soil is the natural filter.
Of course.
Isn't that brilliant?
Filter.
Mother Nature, you just can't,
Right.
do experiments with that. Now, sir,
Let
please
me
go ahead.
add to this Islamabad issue. I was sitting on an advisory board of during the Musharraf period. I raised this issue that let us make it law in Islamabad. No new house will be built without having the rainwater harvesting system. It's
Should be a part and parcel.
but it's not a big sort of investment. You have to have just two systems where you can store the rainwater and use it in toilets, washroom,
For lawn.
car wash, everything. You will have no water shortage in Islamabad.
It is part of the.
Why can't we make it a law? And then second, this is a better planned city. Why can we plan this recharge wells?
Sir, if you remember, Iltaf Saab, who was the former chairman of the cricket board also, I mean, he had some brilliant ideas, and he told me once that, in Islamabad, we have started doing this experiment of cleaning the water, recycling the water.
Yeah.
So, sir, do you have any idea what is happening with that kind of a project, or is it closed?
Dr. Zafar Altaf.
Zafar Altaf.
Yeah.
So I worked, we worked together on many different issues. I miss him. He was the only.
What a visionary man he was.
In the bureaucracy, I found person who will boldly go for out-of-box solutions, and he used to sort of introduce or in these things. He basically developed this system because he was in the agriculture, in the National Agriculture Research Center.
I remember, right?
And the water coming from Chak Shahzad, they diverted it through the center and passed it through some natural filtration from one pond to the other.
Using vegetation.
Using some natural vegetation. The nature gifted us with so many different zero cost technologies. There are some vegetations, the clean water, even sewage water to almost drinkable level. So they were cleaning
and
that
all through the natural process.
Yes, they were cleaning it and then using as irrigation water for the.
It's called constructed wetland. So basically, they develop a wetland where water enters and it goes through different filtration process, and then ultimately it is water which you can use for agriculture purpose. and it's quite good. I mean, like, it does not smell bad. It does not. It looks quite good.
But you just can't drink it. But you can use it otherwise.
Yeah.
So that's perfect.
But particularly for irrigation, crop production, we are using water for vegetables around our cities, sewage water. So that is creating havoc with our health system.
In Karachi, sir,
Gutter Bagicha.
sir, there is a concept of gutter bagicha properly. I mean, you go towards Kurangi Creek from Defence, and you can't, because pungent smell is all over that area. And can you imagine, in that kind of a smell, I've seen kids playing, I've seen cows and camels also eating, and imagine, forget about the vegetation, sir, that is the meat you will be having at some stage. So that's a long story. But sir, now another. Shahid Rehman is your new Minister for Climate Change. A dynamic lady, a lot of vision, and perhaps she's one of those people who are doers actually. You know, if she's doing something, she means it. Now, the important factor is that there were a lot of conventions, there were a lot of seminars conducted, and issues were also raised. Earlier than that, I mean, Aslam Saab was also a part of that campaign, and he also, you know, this billion trees tsunami concept. I think it's great to do that. But there are certain steps which an individual needs to take. Like you just mentioned that in Islamabad, if this this regulation is made mandatory, things can change. Similarly, sir, grow a tree or something of that sort definitely is going to help. Look at what has happened to Lahore, sir. It has become a concrete city. So the case is with Multan, because population is going to grow. So the cases is with Islamabad. There used to be houses with so much of trees. Now these are block houses, basement 1, 2 and 3.
Yes.
And just look at the amount of water that is consumed.
Yes.
I mean, 4 families are practically living now, where 1 family used to be. So this is what we really need to look into. Now, as I said, tell us one more important factor. What we have also witnessed, especially I'm talking about that we used to say that, well, we have got 4 weathers. And the Canadians, they said, we also have 4 weathers. Somebody asked them that, what are you talking about? He said, well, we have got winter, and then we have got June, July and August. So, well, in Pakistan, we practically had winters, and then we used to have the month of spring and then summers and then autumn. So spring vanished.
Right.
Now, literally, you switch off your heater, and after a week or 2, you switch on your AC.
Yes.
What is this happening, sir?
I think there are many factors. One is related to climate change, but then also I think our lifestyle has changed to that extent. You're talking about AC. I still remember that in Murray, there was hardly any fan. Few decades ago, but now you will see air conditions in
London model cars. There used to be no AC, if you remember, in the 80s, and now you talk about 40 degrees for them.
In the buildings.
So I think if you talk about Islamabad, people who used to have 1 bike or 1 scooter about 40 years ago, now they have, you know, everybody in the family has at least a car. Or if not car, at least there are 2 to 3 cars at each household.
That disposal of every kid, yeah.
Basically what we are doing is, we are enhancing our carbon footprint by using maximum fuel, by putting carbon in the atmosphere, and there are studies that...
Emissions, basically.
Emissions, yeah. There are studies which shows that 40 to 45% of the air pollution is because of the vehicular emissions actually contribute to that extent. And that, I mean, like one factor, I've been living in Islamabad since 1971, and that was the time when we had omnibus service, we had, you know, public transport was available, and
people used to travel.
Yes, yeah. I used to go to college in Rawalpindi, and I used to use omnibus. And there was like 25 paisas.
There used to be GTS also, if you remember, sir.
That is government transport.
Yeah.
That is what I'm talking about, and it, very punctual, on time. So that has actually changed, and now everybody has its own transport. So what is happening? It's not only that
Load
we are
on the roads,
contributing.
load on the environment.
It is not that we are contributing emissions from the vehicle, but then we are expanding our roads at the cost
Cutting
of
the trees.
Yes, at the cost of vegetation. So we are cutting the trees and we are making concrete.
This is what is happening on the Kashmir highway at the moment. As
Every
we speak.
highway, I mean, like Margala Avenue is in the process. So I think the overall our lifestyle has changed to that extent that our carbon footprint has increased tremendously. So
it's a population growth. Don't you think that
is
has also?
Of course, that is.
Now, in the interesting news is that we are 8 billion people living on Earth.
Yes.
And interestingly, China is not the #1 country as far as population is concerned. India has surpassed.
Yes.
Now, so when you talk about China, not China, India, Pakistan, countries like Saudi Arabia for that matter, sir, people who are under the age of 35, they almost 2/3 are more than that, right? That is, so sir, obviously these are the people who will have kids at some stage, or even the younger lot. Because just look at the concept of that baby boomer post Second World War in United States of America. So there was this bubble, you know, which was traveling. Then in 50s into 60s, into 70s, they were teenagers. The hippie culture came. Everything is interlinked. Now, sir, you are talking about population growth at a much faster pace. Forget about 2.2%. No, sir, it's not. The other day I heard Sardar Saab, he said 30 crore log. 30 crore means 300 million, sir.
Right.
Because we are not even sure how many we are. But I'm sure because these people will multiply that particular youth segment. We're not prepared for that.
Right.
You talk about any good business, people say real estate. You know why, sir? Everybody would need a house, either to rent or to sell or to buy or something. So this is a business that is going to continue, sir. People need that. So the case is with fuel, more cars. There is no government policy. We always talk about going green. Unfortunately, sir, even during the war of Ukraine, now we have learned that the 8 of these atomic reactors which were producing electricity for Germans, they were shut down because of the pressure of the people after seeing what happened in Fukushima in Japan during the earthquake of 2011. Now, interestingly, sir, they are shifting back to coal. So a production of a country which is Germany means more emissions. Everything is going to. So the cases with Pakistan, we are still having and talking about the coal-based electricity generators.
We recently added.
That's what I'm saying.
So I think we are talking about what is happening in the cities and how we and the global community is feeling. What about the farmers? They know if it is going to rain. They have not much to do. They need to make the investments that they don't have the capacity to do, and we are unable to support them because we say we don't have the resources. In this year's heat wave, there's no sort of official estimates, but we feel from 6 to 10% reduction in the wheat crop. That would simply mean
because of early rains and less heat. That's what you have learned.
Heat wave.
Heat wave. Because the size of the grain was much smaller. Yes.
And at weight lost.
Obviously.
Weight. So on average, I would say from one acre of land, farmers lost from 5,000 to maybe up to 10,000-15,000 rupees from this heat wave. So they
and perhaps that is the reason why we're importing 3 million tons of wheat now.
Almost 4.
Okay.
So if we say want to see the damage, we can estimate how much we are going to spend on the import of that wheat. So that so but we are not as a nation, we are not ready to pay our farmers.
So your water security, your food security is a part of your national security now.
Right.
It's no more your internal threat or your external threat. This is the real threat.
We are ready to pay for the import bills. We are not ready to invest in our agriculture to do better.
Sir, I was just told that we are totally running out of time. One quick comment, sir. this smog concept.
Yes.
Smoke and fog put together becomes smog.
Yeah.
Sir, Lahore is getting so affected.
So it's transport. Basically, you know, like carbon that is emitting, you know, like from industries, from burning of stubbles, and also from vehicular emissions is contributing to this phenomena. And
so many people are getting sick because of that,
yes,
sir.
of course.
Having this respiratory problems.
Yeah.
Plus this burning of the rice stubbles.
Rice stubbles, yeah.
and-
Rice
and,
stubble. Somebody said that, you know, India should be responsible for that. Whether it's
they
India.
they are also,
That is
but
all-
they cannot control. If we are burning, we might be affecting them also.
Sir, I've seen that's being burnt even along the motorway.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to really slow down your car because you can't see what's going on.
There were accidents actually.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we need to support our farmers for on-farm water storage.
There has to be a proper mechanism, sir. It's a huge subject. That's what I've learned from you people, and I think it really needs immediate attention, and certain strong measures should be adopted on immediate basis.
Immediate and long term.
And long term. And there should be consistency in the policy, because at the end of the day, sir, it's about our future generations. But anyway, Dr. Saab, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure having you, sir, as well. And that's all we have for this hour. Inshallah, I'll see you on Monday at 8:05 p.m. Till then, you take good care of yourself. Have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.